Hey everyone, welcome again to this new edition of the Lunch and Learn of Job City. My name is Schubert Rodriguez. I'm a senior software developer here in Job City. And well, thank you everyone for assisting today. So today we have Granja, sorry. He's an amazing QA engineer from Quito, Ecuador. And he's talking today about the effective communication in the workplace. So give a great welcome to Nitai.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm glad that you are joining us. I do apologize in advance because I got sick over the weekend. I'm trying to get better, so if you find my voice a little bit funky or funny, that's why. Uh, Thank you, Trevor, for the introduction. And well, as you mentioned, I'm a QA engineer here at Job City. But let's get into it, okay? Today we're going to be talking about effective communication in the workplace, and you maybe wonder why did a QA engineer select this topic? Well, let me talk about a little bit of my background. To start, I actually studied to be a commercial pilot, and when I was on my flying training, one of the most important part of the training was actually communication. And why effective communication, you may ask, is in aviation we have to communicate all over the all times with the ATC for giving instructions, giving positions, and you have to be as brief as possible, as consistent as possible, and concise as possible. So because everybody's listening to you over the radio, everybody's listening to you, and I was thinking that it is the same thing in the workplace that we do in the software engineering world. I started as a Scrum Master, and communicating. It's really important. Making sure that everybody understands you. It's really important when you're a Scrum Master, and also when I started doing QA, because you have to always transmit or communicate with developers. You have to communicate with the product owner sometimes. So it is important we have effective communication. All right. So that's why I selected this topic, and let's start talking about it. First of all, what is exactly effective communication? Well, talking about effective communication, we can say that it refers to the ability to transmit information as clearly, accurately, and comprehensively so that the message is understood and received as intended. And we can say that is correct because in communication we have always three aspects of communication. We have the sender, we have the message, and then we have the receiver. So it is important that we can transmit this information embedded on the message as clearly, as accurate as, and comprehensively, so the person that it's receiving the message gets the exact message that we are trying to say. For instance, I can put an example of this. If I say, "Hey, today is sunny," you may understand that here in where I'm at Quito, Ecuador, it's a sunny day. But let's say you don't live in Quito. Let's say you live probably in Colombia. So if you look out of the window, it might be cloudy over there. Let's say, hey, maybe it might be sunny over there, but here is a little bit cloudy. Okay, but let's change that phrase and let's say, hey, here at Quito, Ecuador, today it's sunny right now. So I'm sending a little bit more clear and accurate information so that the receiver of the message, you know, it's easier. So let's say that Simon is on the call and he say, well, I'm in Colombia, but yes, in Quito today it might be sunny, and here, well, it's cloudy. So you can see it might be sound as simple as that, but the message, the way we say things, can affect things, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Also, effective communication entails conveying ideas, emotions, opinion, or instructions in a way that minimizes misunderstandings and achieve a smooth and productive exchange of information. Yes, so I was mentioning you before that the way we say things is important, and also the ideas and emotions that we transmit or instructions in this case are really clear. If I have a ticket open for whatever user story I might be testing and I have a test case, uh, I might find something that is not clear in the instructions or maybe the opinion, and that means that I have to go check with the developer or go check with the product owner to see if the story was reading in a different way, or if I might have to ask different questions, modify the story. So this can be avoided. We have ideas and instructions really clear, and we're going to talk about effective communications because it does come in different ways and different challenges nowadays. So yes, we need to have these instructions, opinions, and emotions really clear on the workplace. Even if you talk about a user story or you're in the sprint retro talking about how you feel inside the company, it's really important. That's why um, this effective communication, it's talking about and referring to all these things. Okay. I encourage you guys to ask as many questions as you want. I'll be answering them as soon as I can. But feel free to ask anything that may sound funny or may sound to make any comments, any questions that you may find interesting. Okay, so when we consider effective communication, we consider communication to be effective when it achieves its purpose, establishes a meaningful connection between participants, and generates mutual understanding. So, yes, sometimes communication, although we are communicating things, the receiver might understand things differently. So that's why we only say communication is effective when the message we are sending it's as clear as we said and accurate as we intended. Okay? So why is effective communication important in our work space? So effective communication always is promoting mutual understanding, avoids misunderstandings, fosters collaboration, and contributes to achieving organizational goals. Referring to this, we always can say that when we are actually doing a scrum and a scrum comes from rugby because the whole team is pushing to the same objective, we need to have the communication really clear and we need to understand everybody. So if we are, let's say, all going north and the message was going north and somebody probably understood going northwest, the team might go into different directions and that is creating a misunderstanding. So achieving collaboration can be a little bit more difficult and also going through the organizational goals as well. So that's why we need to avoid these misunderstandings and communicate things in the best way possible. Okay. It also involves involves active listening to others, expressing ideas concisely, adapting to colleagues' communication styles, and using appropriate communication channels. Yes, we are different people, and nowadays that in this case that I'm work remotely, it is sometimes a challenge to communicate things in different ways because nowadays we use text message or emails, and sometimes we require video call or a phone call. But no one has to be on the same probably status. Probably there's someone like it might be an introvert that doesn't like phone calls or video calls. They will rather prefer an email or a text message. So we have to adapt with what our colleagues are receiving the best way our messages, and also listening to everybody. Okay, listening is the first part of having an effective communication, and we are gonna talk about it a little bit more in deep next. Okay, so we talk about effective communication to improve the levels of productivity among the employees of our company or the fulfilling of the tasks among the members of our team. It is necessary to know how to effective communicate things. Okay, let's talk about it. So, so far we've talked about what is effective communication, why it's important to have effective communication in your workplace. Now we're gonna talk a little bit more about what techniques should we be using to have effective communication in the workplace. First of all, take care of the non-verbal language and tone of voice. As I mentioned before, the way we say things matter, the way we communicate things matter, and sometimes we can use some gestures, we can use some smile. If we can say probably the same message like, "Hey, I need help with this," it will sound completely different. If I ask, "Hey, I probably need help with this," it's kind of the same message, but the way you receive it, it may sound different. The first one could say, "Hey, I probably will kind of wait a little bit," but if I sound a little more urgent with a lot of more gesture, it's gonna probably sound that the communication is saying, "I need help right now." So the way we say things do affect things. Okay. The second technique that it's be sure to communicate important information face to face. And this nowadays can be achieved. You will say, well, we're not in an office. That's fine. We have phone calls or video calls that should be used to transmit very important informations, such as probably um, I'm gonna transmit an important message like, "Hey, I'm gonna change the today's meeting for, I don't know, Thursday." It can probably be received by an email. That's fine. But let's say you're giving a raise to somebody or you're having a promotion. You would like probably your boss or being an employee, you would like better that have that call face to face. So it is important that important things are mentioned face to face. Also, we're humans. Sometimes we need interaction, but not always, right? We have to always find the right time and communication channels to, send a message. Sometimes I might get a phone call saying, "Hey, you got a raise," but if I get that call at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, it might be not be the right time to get that message. So yes, we always have to find the right time. If we have some different zones on the time zones, if I'm talking to my boss and I know he's 2 time behind me, I may say, well, I can probably get him a message. It's 1 a.m. It might be a little bit late over there, so we gotta be careful when we send this message. And also, as we mentioned before, nobody has to like the same things. Probably some colleague likes to receive an email or a text message. So finding the right time and communication challenge is important. And also, last but not least, improve our soft skills. And soft skills, it may sound like having a small talk or having to talk a little bit more properly, or in my case, practicing English because English is not my main language. Those all of things can help communicate things better and a little bit more effectively when you're talking to in the workplace. And so far, if you feel like these techniques you need help or you're probably not applying all of them, don't worry. We're going to talk about next on how to improve, right? Because as I always say, there's always room for improvement. There's always a chance to learn something new. So let's talk about how to improve effective communication. Okay, remember that improving effective communication is an ongoing process, like everything, requires practice and constant attention. So practice made perfect, right? I cannot learn how to play an instrument or the guitar in a day, probably not 2 days. It will take you like a month to get good and probably like a year to get like insanely good. But it requires practice and it requires a constant effort. It is the same thing with communication. If we start practicing the following tips that I'm gonna show you in a bit, it probably get better. And that's something that it's a daily process. We have to make it practice in our common goals at home. Like in here at my house with my wife, I can practice effective communication when, we probably need to coordinate events or a Saturday date night or something like that. It will be different the way we say things and the way we communicate. It can be affected or it could be applied in every aspect. How do we get better at the workplace? Let's start looking into that. First, and most important thing is we gotta start practice active listening. Pay full attention to others when they are speaking. And this can be sometimes a little bit more difficult in some meetings or in some remote meetings. If you don't pay full attention to others, like you're in a remote meeting, you can may lose or even in present. If you're present in the meeting, if you're not paying full attention, you might get lost part of the message or part of the important message, if not the full message. Also, if you're communicating so to some coworker about some user story and once he's demoing the story or talking about the story in the sprint planning, if you're not paying full attention, if you go back, they probably are gonna wonder, "Hey, we talk about this," and you'll say no, but they are gonna say yes, and it's important. We start practicing active listening everywhere and into instructions, into the user story, in sprint planning, sprint retro if you do Scrum. So really, really the first tip. Also, as I was saying, in all aspects of life, always practice active listening to understand the message before we do our first reply. Okay, moving going into the first part of sending the message, we have to be very concise. Communicating your ideas, your clear language, and avoid unnecessary jargon or technicalities. For example, when I was talking at the beginning why I picked the topic that I am a commercial pilot, I would probably extend with technicalities or unnecessary information, like, hey, when you're taxiing the airplane and you have to communicate the ATC, your ground speed, or you probably have to ask for the road permissions or the approval of the flight plan. It may sound like you may or may not understand what I'm trying to communicate, but that's completely unnecessary, and we can avoid that, right? If the message is clear and going into the technicalities is not what I want to do, I can switch it over and start using like real language, simple ideas, simple language, so everybody can understand what I'm trying to communicate. So be clear and concise when you give the first response after you practice active listening. If I hear and I understand a message, I will try to respond it or be as clear and concise as I can. Okay? Use the appropriate communication channel. Sorry, we talked about this before on the techniques. Sometimes a face-to-face conversation or a phone call can be more effective than an email or a text message. Yes, this is true sometimes, but we also have to be clear and concise when we do text messages or emails. Sometimes we may have asynchronic communication. That means that I can be here at 1 p.m. and somebody can be at the India at, I don't know, 9 p.m., and the time zones will be different. So the person in the India may not be able to respond the message right away. So we gotta be concise and use the appropriation communicate challenge. I know that that person can miss probably a text message, but if the message is important, the message, I probably should phone call, right? I couldn't ask my wife to marry me over the over the phone or email, right? I gotta do like get down on my knees face to face. It's the same at work. Yeah, I have to transmit an important message about probably some bill have to be taken to production or an important bug that came back from the client. I probably need to use a phone call, probably an email if it's important, or call my boss, depending on the urgency. So be careful once you select the communication channels. Be probably mindful when and where are you gonna transmit the message. Also, practice empathy. Try to recognize individual and cultural differences and respect them. As I was mentioned, English is not my main language, so sometimes may sound a little bit funny or I may sound loud, a little bit more concise. That's why I'm practicing my soft skills. I'm practicing my pronunciation. I may practice my grammar. So but also, it can be the other way around. If I am speaking in Spanish to someone whose main not language is Spanish, he might get lost, right? He may get confused. So if I start talking in my first language, it might be difficult to them. So understanding these cultural and individual differences can be helpful for us, like when we are talking about like job cities and multi and cultural and individual. We are all around the world, so we may not talk the same languages, but we can all speak over English. We are try to send the message as clear as possible. So we are being empathic with all the other persons that are receiving the message. Okay, if you're talking to me being a QA, talking to the developer about some requirement, I probably understand that he may not see the full story requirements. Probably that part, or he didn't see the full feature. Maybe he saw part of the feature and he's talking about this particular user story. I guess to be empathic, also as a scrum master, and say, hey, maybe I have a knowledge that he doesn't have. So instead of going into an argument, let's talk about practice a little bit more empathy. And we have the right word and the time and the right time. It will surprise you how effective a communication effectiveness, let's say put it that way, can be. So that's great. Let's try to practice a little bit more empathy, okay? And the last two tips, how to improve effective communication, providing and ask constructive feedback. Be sure to provide constructive feedback and specific feedback to your peers, highlighting both to be positive aspects and those that can be improved. Uh, when we talk about a PMA attitude, we always say that there's not wrong things or something that we are doing the wrong way. There's always things that can be improved or room for improvement. Okay. So having to ask for feedback, it lets me know what I could be doing better, and also doing feedback, it let us know some coworkers what they can do be doing better. We gotta be careful. We gotta be concise. We have to be accurate on the words, and we are gonna select. But yes, if I can learn and have room for improvement, I will happily take all the ideas and comments that I can get. So don't forget to always ask for feedback. And as I always said, if you don't have anything good or positive to say about someone, you never know how rough can as a colleague days be. Maybe he's struggling with a bug, maybe he's having a hard time coding some story. We don't know, right? So let's probably be feedback and practice practice empathy with one another, and that can get a lot better. And the last tip to improve effective communication would be the practice assertiveness. Express your ideas, opinions, and needs clearly and respectively. As I was mentioned, if I don't have anything good to say about the other one, please, I will probably say to myself. So that's a good way to do so. So practice assertiveness when, how we say things. Also, it's important. But being assertive, it's the best way. If we see someone struggling, probably offering help. If we see that somebody is struggling or taking a lot of with a user story, he might be stuck. Let's always help. Always transmit the knowledge that you have. Knowledge transferring is also a way of assertiveness, and expressing ideas and opinions in the right time and in the right way. It always improves communication. Okay, so as I mentioned, if you have any comments, questions, please let me know. Um, I'll be able to answer them as soon as possible. Okay. So these are all the techniques that I have to improve or effective communication. And summarizing this talk, the importance in effective communications lies in the benefits it brings to workers at the organization as a whole. Yes, if I don't have like effective communication with human resources, or I don't have effective communication with management, it can get it really, really messy. Let's put in an example. Let's say that all of us, or if we work at Job City, I don't know the person who I should be talking about if I have to take vacations. So let's say I go to probably Schubert and say, "Hey, Schubert, I have to take vacation in November. Do you know who I have to talk to?" And probably Schubert knows somebody, or maybe he wants somebody, and he's gonna reply, "Hey, Nitai, maybe you should talk to Simon." So I go talk to Simon, and I'll go back and say, "Hey, Simon, do you know who I should be talking to?" And Simon could say, "Maybe you should talk to human resources." Then I go to human resources, and they say, "Hey, you're the correct we're the correct guy, so what do you need?" You know, it will be chaos. It will be taking me probably, it is not that effective. It is not, it is time consuming. But let's say that how Age of City right now, I know if I have to take vacation, I gotta go to my partnership relationship or probably my account manager, right? So I go talk to Giselle and I say, "Hey, Giselle, I have to take vacations in November. You see how much time I saved and how more effective it is to the company." So that means that Giselle is doing her work at managing my vacations, and then I go back to my client and start working, and I didn't spend much time figuring out how I gotta take my vacations. So that is effective. That is effective in the whole structure the communication place. So that pretty much summarize this topic. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you like it. And if you have any questions, now it's the time to ask them, and I'll probably be answering.
Okay. Thank you very much, Natalie, for that wonderful presentation. So, yes, indeed, we have some questions here. So, Tatiana is asking, how can one become aware of one's emotions and control them with communicating with others?
Okay, that's an excellent question, Tatiana. To be aware of our emotions and having effective communication, it might involve a little bit of patience and having the right time and the right way of saying things. And this lies, I believe, into the how we say things. For instance, if I'm feeling a little bit more angry about a topic, or I recognize that I'm anxious about a topic, it might be a better way that probably I recognize that and find the right time to talk about the aspect you or the message you need to communicate. And as doing that, probably you have to wait a couple minutes, take a glass of water, think about it, and then you send the message. It's gonna help the way you say things. It's gonna matter, and I think that if you are aware of that and you take probably a moment, control your emotions, then you communicate the message. It's really good because if you're, let's say, you're angry and you have to talk about to somewhere that is part of HR, you're gonna go comply. You're gonna probably yell a little bit. The way they understand the way you're feeling, it might not sound great, right? So I'll say that is an excellent question. But practicing actively listening and practicing the way we say things, if it's important, say it face to face. Take your time, take the right channel through a phone call, through a video call, or through an email. Sometimes when we are writing emails, it's kind of easier that you can read what you're saying and say, maybe I sound a little bit more serious. I should change it a little bit. It helps. Also, practicing if it's important, something that you have to say. Try to talk to yourself before saying it to somebody else to see how would you react to that message. This is practicing empathy, right? So that's how I handle it. Excellent question, Tatiana. I hope my answer helped.
Okay, so if anyone has any other question, please write it in the chat. I can ask directly to Natalie. In the meantime, yeah, I do have a question. So, you know by context that there are some running jokes about QIs and devs and not getting along together. So, well, we know that that's just a prank, that's a lie. But which soft skills do you have to apply intentionally to build a strong and effective communication with the devs?
Okay, I can tell you what I do personally. It's because I found with my coworkers that this work, and every time I have to go talk about every bug or probably a user story defect, what I would do is first of all get into a call, right? And we talk about a little bit of the user. Say, hey, I understand this about the user story, right? We go through the user story, and once we both have the same understanding about the user story, I'll say, hey, I found this. Do you think it's a bug? Do you think it's a story defect? How can we manage it? So that's a soft skill. Learning how to talk to people, learning how to communicate effectively things. It will help a lot. And I would know it's a prank. I actually get along super well with my developer friends. Yeah, but sometimes we get these things, and that it's funny because when I started realizing communications from when the moment that you create the user story and the way you perceive the user story, it might be different between the product owner, the Scrum Master, the software developer, and the actual QA. And it might sound like the same user story for everyone, but that's also a soft skill that we should be practicing, right? Writing messages, writing user stories in a concise and accurate way, it helps a lot because if we all five go in and read the same user story and we are understanding five different things, then that's a bad reading user story, right? So we have to be careful of how we also write things. Writing, reading, listening are all some skills that will help us deal with this. I know it's kind of a prank, but yeah, this relationship between developers and QAs, and it's fun. I always make jokes because it's like, I know if somebody has seen the video, but I find it amusing when they say the developer is handing over the product, and then you see the mom giving the kid the this box that have a triangle, a circle, and a square, and then the guys comes in and hey, this is a circle, goes in the circle. You put it in the circle, and then QA goes, maybe this is a triangle. I'm gonna put it in the circle, and then he put it in the circle, and I've been
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
yeah, it's really amusing. But that, hey, that's the same way in communication, right? If you as a QA say, hey, I know this is not the feature and it was not developed this way, but I did this and it's going through. Maybe it's funny. I know it shouldn't, but I'm practicing empathy, right? I'm saying I understand your point. You're gonna say the user story didn't mention that at all, and the product is intended to use to put the circle in the circle. Yes, but I'm trying to put a triangle. So maybe we should do it a little. Put a message, like put an instruction. Please do not try to put figures in the wrong hole, for instance. So don't try to put it this. It will give us better feedback, right? So communicating them things can help. Can help. Also, if you have a good relationship, and you always talk about things, like I have this saying is uncomfortable conversation to having healthy relationships. If you are able to speak up your opinions and say your ideas, and also open to receive all of the comments or the feedback, not only giving but also receiving, you're gonna have a great time. At least that's from my experience and point of view.
Yeah, then thanks, Nate, for your answer. That was like really nice and helpful. Yeah, actually, there are a lot of memes about that. So let me check the chat. So we don't have any more questions. So please, if you have any, just put in there. So okay, I can ask another one in the meantime. So one with problem that we have with the IT industry development, that developing things and suffer a lot, is having a lot of problems with some unnecessary meetings, like periodically. And what tips do you suggest in order to prioritize, or any advice that we can guide us in order to dealing with this kind of problem when we
Okay.
have some unnecessary meetings? So you know the phrase, no? That meeting could be a mail or something like that. So
Yes. First of all, having unnecessary meetings, I believe it comes from a process where communication is not being that effective because someone at management or someone that is in charge of the user stories might have the feeling that somewhere in the process we are missing something. It is either the product that we are developing or the product that we are delivering, or that what the client is expecting might be something lost in the way. So that's why we have all those unnecessary meetings to try to clarify or try to give more um, intentional guidance or more accurate guidance to what we are expecting. One way that I would suggest that these meetings could get like a little bit avoided is like answer the right questions at the right time. For instance, in the first meeting, right? If we take, for example, a Scrum has these ceremonies that, let's say, that are um, they get delivered every sprint. Let's talk about the sprint planning, the sprint retro, the Scrum, and the stand-ups, and then we have the backlog refinement meetings. On the sprint planning, let's say that we are reading the user stories, we're deciding which user stories we're going to commit into the Scrum, and let's say, hey, yes, I understand the user story, I understand the feature, let's commit it. And then mid through the sprint, I read actually the story and I say, maybe I don't understand this. Then I have to go to the product owner or probably the Scrum Master and say, I didn't understand this, what they are talking about. Then if the Scrum Master or the product owner, they don't get it, they will probably have to go uh, to the client and say, hey, what exactly are you wanting to get done by this user story? So you see how much further time we push that, and then it means then there's going to be a meeting to talk about that user story that you'd have a question about that could have been asked actually in the beginning. So if we ask the question probably in the sprint plan and say, hey, I don't really get that story, what are they trying to say, or I don't understand the feature, the requirement, let's talk about it. This process and these meetings can get avoided. So let's say that you answer the question and somebody has the ability to answer the question right away. That's great. If not, you have the question, you have the answer. So there is no necessary meeting to discuss about the user story. There's no necessary meeting between the Scrum Master and the product owner. You just go right away to the client, right? So the way we write things, the way we say things, and the actual time to ask the right questions, it also influences in this unnecessary meanings that I'll say. And also, I have this feeling that sometimes we feel like it's an unnecessary meeting, but it happened to be a different meeting. I can give you an example. So let's say that I didn't go into this meeting because I think I know everything about the ticket, right? I am not developing the story. I am not going to test the story. But it looks like I have a story that it's related to the story that they are talking about. And I missed this meeting because I see for me it's unnecessary. But I didn't go to the meeting. Then I go to my story, and then I'll say, hey, well, it's related to that story, and don't understand what we actually want. So what we actually are developing, right? So now I am creating another unnecessary meeting because I have to ask to the guys that went to the unnecessary meetings and discuss the same topic because I didn't win. And I'm creating another unnecessary meeting just because I thought I knew everything, right? So it's important to us that we understand that hey, you might not learn anything, but you might, right? And if I ask the right questions and at the right moment at that unnecessary meeting, maybe I am avoiding an unnecessary meeting of the future, right? So it's kind of a process. It's like a change. So yes, something has to be evaluated from the beginning, from the top, and then we can go down and down further of those meetings. And yes, I understand it's a difficult process. Before I can talk of my experience before on my company and the client, we didn't have Scrum, and believe me, we had a lot of unnecessary meetings, and we were having like five sprint plannings in 1 week because nobody had the right directions, right? That's why we switch it up for Scrum. Now we have a lot less of unnecessary meetings. Sometimes you need to meeting, but yes, when you do those big changes, you can address some issues, and it's all communication. It's actually surprising.
Yeah, actually, you remind me some experience that I had that in one moment on a project we have meetings in order to discuss how many meetings do we need. So yeah, that happens a lot. Thank you, Natalie, for your answers. So I saw in the chat we don't have any more questions. I want to thank you, everyone, to be able to assist today. We are hoping that the next month, that the next Launch and Learn, you are here as well. And yeah, thank you once again. Nice talking to you.
Yes, Roberto, thank you. You too. It's been a pleasure. And if you have any other questions, feel free to message me through Slack. If I'm available, I will answer them. And thank you guys. Thank you for your collaboration, to being attentive and having taking your time to attend to this lunch. And I'll really appreciate it. And let's start communicating a little bit better.
Thank you. Bye. Bon appetit.
All right.